She poured coffee, filed papers, got laughed at. But when enemy radios called out, "Ghost Lynx," every soldier turned pale, because the quiet woman in the logistics tent was once the deadliest shadow in U.S. recon. Now exposed, hunted, and haunted by a mission gone wrong. She's forced to choose: stay invisible or become the legend they buried. Welcome to my channel. My name's Rachel Morales. I'm 41 years old, and for the last 2 years, I've poured coffee, filed papers, and managed logistics out of a dusty forward operating base on the outskirts of Khost, Afghanistan. FOB Hawk. Not exactly a postcard paradise, unless you like barbed wire, sandstorms, and the gentle hum of surveillance drones circling above your bunk. To most of the soldiers on base, I'm the quiet woman with the chipped thermos and a baseball cap that never comes off. They call me Supply Chick, or sometimes Miss Fix-It, if they're feeling generous. Nobody asks about my past. They don't know I was once someone very different, someone whose name used to echo across encrypted comms like a myth. But legends are just stories until someone remembers them. It started like any other suffocating afternoon. The heat had that shimmer to it, the kind that makes your skin buzz before it burns. I was delivering requisition reports to the operations tent when I heard the voice. "Hey, who let the coffee girl near command? Get her out of there." The words slapped harder than they meant to. They didn't know I was standing just inside the flap, right next to the mission board. Didn't know I'd just overheard a fragment of intercepted radio chatter. But that wasn't what stopped the room cold. The static had barely cleared when a voice, low, clipped, unmistakably foreign, cut through the noise. "We want Ghost Lynx. We know she's there." The room fell into a silence so heavy you could feel the tension gathering like fog. Chairs creaked. Papers stopped rustling. Every officer turned to look at the spot where I'd been standing seconds before. I was gone, slipped out the back of the tent without a sound, because I knew what would come next. I'd hoped the name was buried, locked in some encrypted black file with no key. But I guess ghosts have a way of crawling out when you least expect it. That was the first time in 3 years anyone had spoken the call sign out loud. Ghost Lynx. They didn't know me, but someone out there still did. I didn't run. I just walked, deliberate and slow, down the corridor behind the mess tent, past the stacked crates of MREs and fuel drums, past the guys playing poker in folding chairs who barely looked up. I made it back to the storage unit where I kept the forms, the coffee filters, the broken fan nobody ever bothered fixing. I sat down on the crate marked non-essential, spare comms, pulled my cap lower, and waited, because I knew exactly what was about to happen. 10 minutes later, the base radio lit up again. Higher command this time. Something clipped and rattling. "Repeat last transmission. Clarify call sign. Confirm target identity." But the voice on the enemy frequency came back with absolute calm. "Ghost Lynx. You have her. You don't even see her." They were right. They didn't see me. Not the real me. They saw a middle-aged Latina logistics worker with old scars and older habits. They saw someone who kept her mouth shut, who never corrected a rank or asked for thanks. A ghost with a clipboard. What they didn't see was the woman who used to wear the insignia of Recon Unit Viper 9. The same Rachel Morales who once led insertion ops across 3 continents and vanished into the hills before the first drone even got off the ground. That Rachel died 3 years ago in Helmand, when a mission went sideways and I walked out the only survivor. 12 of my people didn't, and I never forgave myself for it. So I didn't tell anyone when I transferred out of the SLEF program. Didn't correct the paperwork when it marked me as medically retired due to stress injuries. Didn't argue when they reassigned me to logistics support, 3 pay grades lower, no questions asked. I wanted it that way. Every morning I wake up before the sun, make coffee in the dented percolator, and hand out supply manifests with a smile no one really looks at. I keep my past behind the wire and my future in the shadow of satellite dishes and HESCO barriers. But when I heard that voice on the radio say my name, my real name, it cracked something I'd welded shut years ago. Not fear, not even anger, just this deep, dull ache. The kind you feel when the past doesn't just knock. It kicks the damn door off its hinges. They knew I was here, and that meant everything was about to change. They didn't come for me right away. That's what surprised me. I expected a knock at my bunk door, a summons to command, an armed escort, and 100 suspicious eyes. But none of that came. Just more heat, more noise, more of the same. Like they were trying to pretend nothing had happened. Or maybe they were waiting to see what I'd do. I played along, brewed the coffee, filed the reports, signed for a shipment of tarps and paracord like my name hadn't just come across an enemy frequency. But everywhere I went, I felt the change. The stares lingered a little longer. Conversation stopped when I walked past. Soldiers whispered things they didn't think I could hear. You think she's really Ghost Lynx? No way. Just a weird coincidence. The lady doesn't even carry a sidearm. She probably washed out of boot camp and begged for a desk job. I didn't correct them. They didn't know the truth. That I'd led operations where we couldn't carry sidearms because they got in the way of stealth. That I'd crawled through minefields without boots, mapped kill zones from the inside, and got people out when no one else could. But that didn't matter. Not anymore. What mattered was that someone, somewhere, wanted me dead. Bad enough to send that message. Bad enough to burn their own signal discipline to make sure it reached the right ears. And the base? They did nothing. That was the part that hurt most. Not the gossip. Not the doubt. The silence. The knowing silence of the officers who looked away because doing something would mean admitting they'd had a weapon sleeping in the supply tent all along. They didn't want to admit that the woman they'd mocked in the mess hall might be the only reason they weren't already on a memorial wall. And then came the call. Late one evening, a patrol went dark. For soldiers. Routine recon around Sector Ridge 17, about 30 clicks north. They'd radioed in 5 minutes out. Then nothing. Just dead air. Standard protocol. Wait for assessment. Check with air support. Prepare for formal rescue if contact isn't re-established within 2 hours. 2 hours. That's what the manual said. But anyone who's been in the field knows. You lose a team out there, and you wait 2 hours? You're not launching a rescue. You're launching a recovery. I sat in the corner of the comms tent, invisible as always, listening to the chatter spiral into confusion. The map was up. Blinking dot, last known location. No movement since. No drones overhead because of sand interference. No quick response unit within 20 clicks. They were just going to wait. Like they always do. Because protocol was safer than risk. I clenched the edge of the metal table so hard my knuckles went white. My heartbeat wasn't racing. It was steady. Familiar. Like a switch had flipped deep inside. Because I knew what had to be done. And I knew no one else would do it. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for a green light or clearance or a nod from some officer with polished boots and 0 scars. I just stood up, walked out of the comms tent, and headed straight for the equipment storage locker. Building 3A, back corner, key code still burned into my memory even though I hadn't used it in over a year. No one stopped me. They didn't even look. To them, I was just Rachel, the admin ghost. Paper shuffler. Coffee pourer. Invisible. That made it easy. Inside the storage unit, everything was exactly where I left it, because I kept it that way. Quietly maintained. Regular maintenance slips filed under dummy work orders. The gear had never been inspected because nobody cared what the support staff stocked. They assumed we didn't know what we were looking at. That was their first mistake. My kit was still intact. Low-profile vest, matte black boots with silent tread, compact carbine folded into a hardened case. I suited up like it was muscle memory, because it was. Every strap found its place. Every pouch clicked in without thought. When I slung the carbine over my shoulder, it felt like shaking hands with an old friend I'd hoped I'd never see again. 15 minutes later, I slipped out past the perimeter fence, low and quiet, just another silhouette vanishing into the dusk. No one followed. No one noticed. And I liked it that way. The route to Ridge 17 cut through dry ravines and brittle forest scrub, terrain that screamed ambush and left nowhere to run. Perfect for setting traps. Or walking into them. I took the high ridge line, moving silent and fast, reading the terrain like a story. Broken branches. Crushed grass. A cigarette, but still warm. Then I found the first soldier. Still breathing. Barely. She'd been shot through the leg and was wedged beneath an overhang. Camo netting tossed over her like a tarp. A trap to draw and rescue. I almost stepped right into it. But I saw the signs. I always see the signs. 3 quick flashes from my infrared pen light, and she blinked back. I crawled in, patched the wound, told her not to speak. She looked at me like I was a ghost, and maybe I was. The rest of the patrol was scattered, 2 dead, 1 missing. But I picked up their trail. Blood on the leaves, drag marks toward the ravine. The ambush team was still in the area. Maybe waiting for a drone strike. Maybe just waiting for protocol to do its job and take too long. But they hadn't planned for someone who didn't follow protocol. Someone like me. What came next wasn't complicated. I moved through the brush like a shadow, struck quick, silent. The first guard never saw me. The second tried to raise a weapon and ended up on the ground with a broken wrist and no breath. The third ran. Big mistake. I found the missing soldier tied up under a camo blind, scared and shaking, but alive. I cut him loose, slapped his helmet twice, our old evac signal, and we moved. Fast. We reached the fallback point 13 minutes later, 2 survivors in tow, no enemy heat on our tail. I didn't radio it in. Didn't need to. They'd figure it out when they saw the cameras. Because base surveillance caught the end of the firefight from a thermal drone that finally rebooted once the sandstorm cleared. And they watched, every single one of them, as one lone operator ghosted through the trees and dismantled the threat with surgical precision. It didn't take long for the chatter to start. Who the hell was that? Where'd she get that gear? Wait, was that? No one said the name. Not out loud. But they all thought it. Ghost Lynx. I made it back just before sunrise, covered in dirt and sweat, bruised ribs throbbing under my vest. Nobody met me at the gate. Nobody stopped me when I ducked under the outer wire and slipped past the sleeping guards. Just like always. I showered, changed, poured the morning coffee, sat in my usual seat in the corner of the mess hall like nothing had happened. But the air had changed. When the rescued patrol was flown in, wounded but alive, the base broke into a low hum of rumors and side glances. They said someone got to them first. Not an airstrike. Not ground forces. Just someone. They didn't know who. Yet. But the enemy did. An hour later, a new intercept came in. A message broadcast across unsecured channels, like they wanted us to hear it. No code. No encryption. Just a voice. Familiar. Cold. All forces in Sector Delta withdraw. Repeat. Withdraw immediately. Ghost Lynx is confirmed active in this zone. Silence followed. Total, utter silence in the comms tent. I wasn't there when they heard it. I didn't need to be. I knew what it sounded like. I'd heard similar orders once, years ago, when my name still meant something to enemies who'd rather flee than face me. But I did see the faces when they came out. The duty officer, the same guy who'd laughed at me 2 days ago for mislabeling a shipment, stared at me like I'd grown wings and a tail. The young lieutenant who once called me Coffee Lady flinched when I passed. They knew. Finally. And the worst part? It wasn't the fear. It was the guilt. Because all of them had walked past me 1,000 times. Mocked me. Ignored me. Filed me away as irrelevant. Now they were wondering what else they'd missed. What else I was capable of. Command moved quickly. Too quickly. I got summoned. Not to the admin tent, but to the ops center. Big difference. The commander was waiting, still in uniform from the night before, pale as chalk, hands shaking as he logged into a secure terminal. His eyes barely met mine. "You should have told us," he said. I didn't respond. He kept typing. When he finally pulled up the file, my file, it took 3 levels of clearance to open. Phoenix Protocol, eyes only. And there it was. My old record. Classified. Scrubbed from every system that wasn't black site coded. Reconnaissance. Target recovery. Silent extractions under enemy control. 12 years of it. 12 years I never spoke about. 11 successful operations. 1 failure. Operation Firelight. That mission. The one that ended me. The commander scrolled in silence, jaw clenched. His eyes stopped on a line halfway down the screen. Presumed Kia, 2019. I watched the blood drain from his face. "You're supposed to be dead," he whispered. "Sometimes," I said. "It's easier to let the world believe you are." He stood, took off his cap, and for the first time since I'd arrived on this base, he saluted me. That salute didn't feel like victory. It felt like a funeral. Not for me, but for the quiet life I'd built these last 3 years. The one with checklists and cargo manifests. The one where I wasn't haunted by the sound of dying soldiers calling my name in the dark. "You're not safe anymore," the commander said after he sat back down. "Not with your name out there. Clav recognized you." His voice was on that transmission. "He's not just pulling out because he's scared. He's regrouping. Planning." Hassan Clav. I hadn't heard that name in years. A war criminal with a knack for surviving when he shouldn't. I'd seen him once, through a sniper scope, during a hostage op near Dukin. The mission had changed last second. The extraction point was hot, and we lost comms mid-pull. I was the one who went back in alone. Clav saw my face that night. And now he knew I was alive. We'll pull you out, the commander said. There's a secure facility in Germany. Intel wants to debrief you, maybe reassign. You'll be protected. I shook my head. You think I came back just to vanish again? He looked like he didn't know whether to argue or salute again. Later that morning, I returned to my bunk, expecting solitude. Instead, I found a small package on my cot. No name, just a single patch resting on top, black stitching, gold thread, same emblem I hadn't worn in 3 years. Phoenix Unit. Folded inside was a note in unfamiliar handwriting. Some of us never forgot who you were. Welcome home. I sat on the edge of the bed and held the patch in my hands for a long time. I remembered what it used to feel like to earn something. Not medals, not promotions, but trust. Out the window, I spotted the lieutenant, the same one who'd called me a joke in front of a dozen soldiers, standing awkwardly outside the mess tent. He looked nervous, hesitant, like he'd been waiting for me. When I stepped out, he walked over quickly. Ma'am, Major Morales, he stammered. I wanted to say we didn't know, and that's not an excuse. Just, we were wrong. I didn't say anything at first, just let him stew in it. Then, you know what the hardest part was? He blinked. Ma'am, knowing that while you were laughing behind my back, I was already calculating how I'd save your life if things went sideways. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. We'd like to learn from you, he finally said. Tactics, situational awareness, whatever you're willing to teach. I studied him, really looked at him, not the rank or the uniform, the person. And for the first time, I didn't see arrogance or pride. I saw regret. I saw someone who'd learned what most people never do. That respect isn't a salute. It's how you act when you realize you were wrong. Maybe, I said. But first, you're going to scrub latrines for a week. Then we'll talk training. He grinned. Yes, ma'am. He left. And I smiled. Just a little. The next morning felt different. I still brewed the coffee. Still prepped the mess hall. But this time, soldiers lined up with something in their eyes I hadn't seen before. Not pity. Not curiosity. Respect. They didn't just want caffeine. They wanted conversation. Tactical questions. Lessons. Quiet observations on movement, on posture, on subtle cues in body language that could save a life. I didn't offer lectures. I offered clarity. Excellence, I told them, doesn't need a spotlight, but it leaves a signature. By the end of that week, we'd marked out an unofficial training course on the far side of the base. It wasn't glamorous, stacked crates, sandbags, and chalk lines. But the soldiers came, even the ones who'd once mocked me, especially them. And when they moved, ran drills, worked formations, I watched closely, corrected with patience, praised with purpose. I wasn't looking for perfection. I was looking for growth. One night, the duty officer, the same man who once kicked me out of a briefing room in front of his peers, stood outside my quarters holding 2 mugs of black coffee. He looked like a kid reporting to the principal. Ma'am, he said, voice low. I said things I regret. Things I never would have said if I'd known who you were. You shouldn't need to know someone's file, I said, to treat them like they matter. He winced, then handed me the coffee. I've got a lot to learn. Yeah, I said, taking a sip. You do. But I could see it in his eyes. He meant it. Things at FOB Hawk were changing. Not because I'd been found out, but because the truth forced everyone to face their own blind spots. Still, I knew it couldn't last. Legends have weight, and sometimes that weight draws fire. 3 nights later, our comms guy picked up a new signal on a scrambled channel. Short range, unencrypted, confirming target presence. Ghost Lynx is here. Begin preparation. My blood went cold. I knew the cadence, the phrasing. It wasn't random chatter. It was a kill team's advanced scout. I went straight to command. The base commander didn't even argue. He pushed aside a sheaf of papers and pointed to the wall map. We've had no perimeter breach, but the timing tracks. We've got reports of movement in Sector 3, locals we don't recognize. Could be nothing. Could be lead operatives. They won't come in force, I said. They'll send 3, maybe 4. Precision team. Ex-military. High skill. No chatter. Just one job. He nodded grimly. You. I turned and walked out without another word. I had a gear locker to check and a rifle to zero in. But just before the door shut behind me, I heard him say something under his breath. Almost like a prayer. God help the ones who try to take her. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't need to. The air had shifted. Too quiet. Too still. No laughter in the yard, no cursing from the maintenance shed. Even the base dogs were uneasy, pacing the fences like they could smell something human noses couldn't. I spent the early hours checking the kill zones, places I'd marked months ago, long before I ever imagined needing them again. I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was preparing to finish one. Bio 300, the outer sensor alarms clicked once. Just once. Then silence. The boys on the perimeter chalked it up to weather or maybe an animal, but I knew better. That's how pros moved. Test the response. See who stirs. See how long it takes before command panics. They didn't know I was already outside the wire. I waited near the fuel depot, low ground, vulnerable, the place any assassin would target to create chaos and distraction. Classic misdirection. That's why I was 2 sectors over, crouched in a culvert, eyes trained on the northwest blind spot, where surveillance flickered every 17 minutes. A flaw I'd pointed out in a report 6 months ago. Nobody ever fixed it. That's where they came in. For shadows. Perfect spacing. No words. Just hand signals and purpose. They moved toward the motor pool, likely planning to hijack a vehicle, slip inside the inner base perimeter, and find their target. Find me. But I was already there. The first dropped without a sound. Rear takedown. Carotid pressure, fast and final. I pulled him into the ditch and moved without hesitation. The second saw me, but a split second too late. My sidearm barked once, suppressed, the round catching him high in the chest. 2 down. The third turned, scanned, eyes frantic, weapon swinging. I waited for him to breathe, then stepped into his peripheral, weapon raised. He hesitated. That was his mistake. They say hesitation kills. I only regret that I didn't see the fourth. She came at me from the left. Fast. Trained. Blade instead of gun. Smart. No muzzle flash, no sound. I barely dodged in time. Her blade grazed my shoulder, hot and sharp. I spun and dropped low, kicked her legs out from under her, then struck with the butt of my rifle, hard and mean. She hit the ground, blood blooming at the edge of her mouth, but her eyes were defiant. You shouldn't be alive, she hissed. I leaned in close. Get used to disappointment. By the time the base alarm finally went off, I was already standing over 4 bodies. One shoulder bleeding, breathing steady, and a message forming in my head. Clav didn't just want me dead. He wanted to remind me who I used to be. Too late. I remembered. By sunrise, the cleanup was underway. The 4 intruders had no identifying marks. No digital footprint. Their gear was top tier. Ex-military, custom modified, no serials. Professionals. Just like I'd been once. The commander met me in the ops center, red-eyed but steady. You okay? He asked, nodding toward my shoulder. Stitched it up, I said. Hurts less than most regrets. He didn't laugh. Didn't have to. We both knew what was coming next. You know where he is? I said. It wasn't a question. Clav had left a trail, deliberately or not. Intelligence chatter, intercepted sat feeds, confirmed movement through a former munitions plant 40 miles east. Remote, fortified, and buried deep behind an abandoned village marked unsafe. UXO. Perfect for a coward to hide. I can't sanction this, the commander said, though he didn't sound convinced. Good, I said, because I'm not asking. He stared at me for a long beat, then pushed a folder across the table. Inside, sat images, ingress routes, timestamps. Off the record, he muttered. If you're caught, I won't be. And if you don't come back? I met his eyes. Then I finished what I should have finished years ago. I packed light, carbine, sidearm, blade. Rations for 12 hours. Comms set to passive receive, no outgoing. No one else came with me. I told them I worked better alone. The truth was, I didn't want anyone else bleeding for my ghosts. The terrain leading to the compound was unforgiving. Dry gulches, rock crests, old minefields that hadn't been mapped since the early 2000s. I moved through it like I'd never left. My muscles remembered. So did the ghosts in my head. I reached the perimeter just after dusk. 2 guards. Lax posture. Bad habits. I put them down fast, clean. Inside, the place was quiet. Too quiet. 1 generator running. No visible heat signatures beyond the main structure. Either Clav was long gone. Or waiting. I found him in the lowest level, where the reinforced concrete still bore Soviet-era graffiti and the stink of old metal. He didn't reach for a weapon. Just looked at me with those dead eyes. You look tired, Lynx. You look slow. You could have stayed gone. You should have stayed scared. He laughed then. The kind of laugh that doesn't have joy in it. Just bitterness. You think killing me will bring them back? No, I said. But it'll stop you from making more. I raised my weapon. He didn't beg. He just closed his eyes. And I fired. I walked out of that bunker alone. Klav's body lay cooling in the dark. No dramatic last words. No whispered apologies. Just silence. The kind of silence I used to crave. The kind that haunted me every time I closed my eyes. The trip back to base took 8 hours. I didn't rush. I stayed off the trails, moved by instinct, slept in the shade of a collapsed radio tower with my weapon across my chest, and the weight of old ghosts finally shifting. By the time I crossed the wire, the base was already humming with the news. They knew. Someone always knows. But no one said a word. They didn't have to. The change was everywhere. When I stepped into the mess hall, every soldier stood up. Not in some parade ground salute. Just a simple, quiet act of respect. No applause. No cheers. Just stillness. I nodded once. Then went straight to the coffee station. Same as always. The lieutenant, Ben, his name was, waited until the line died down before stepping up. He had a new scar across his cheek and a field journal in his hand. Training still at 0600, right, ma'am? I nodded. Bring your gear. He paused, then held out the journal. The guys, we've been taking notes. Lessons, tactics, and something else. I flipped it open. Inside, page after page of signatures. Handwritten entries. Little memories, tiny observations. What I learned from the major today. What I want to do better tomorrow. How to lead in silence. At the end, a question. What don't I know about the person standing next to me? I closed the journal. Felt something move in my chest I hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude. Not for the recognition, but for the understanding. For the fact that they'd seen me now. Not just the record. Not just the ghost. Me. I still served coffee. Still managed inventory. But every morning, there were more soldiers at the mess hall than ever before. And not just for caffeine. For lessons. Quiet ones. The kind that get under your skin and stay there. I taught them how to read the ground. How to feel the tension in silence. How to move without being noticed. And how to know when you should be noticed. And maybe more than anything else, I taught them how to look. To see the people around them. Not for their rank. Not for what they wore. But for what they carried. One evening, as the sun dropped below the wire, Ben asked me the question I knew would come eventually. Do you ever wish things had gone differently? I thought about it. About firelight. About the soldiers I couldn't save. About the years I spent hiding from the world and from myself. And then I answered, no, because every scar I carry means someone else didn't have to. He nodded. We talk about you now, you know, like a story. Just make sure you get the story right. What's the truth? I looked out at the base, alive with purpose, soldiers working side by side. Fewer egos, more questions, less bravado, more listening. The truth, I said, is that valor doesn't always shout. Sometimes it walks beside you in silence, watching your back until you're ready to do the same. He wrote that down in his journal, word for word.